Welcome to Talking Giants player profile previews, episode one of these. These get jumbled, but I could confidently say episode one, we have Sterling Shepard and David Mayo, and I'm excited, Justin. We are back. We start 5 episodes a week, Monday through Friday. We're going to have 3 player profile preview episodes. I mean, 6 players a week, and 2 regular episodes until game week. We're going to try to get some interviews, but it's episode one. Last year we started with Sterling Shepard. We're going to do it again. Sterling Shepard is the longest tenured Giant. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. Justin, how are you feeling about getting into these PPPs? A lot of P's.
This is the most exciting time of the year. There's no doubt about that. Talking Giants, we're going to be rolling Monday through Friday, giving you episodes, mini episodes 3 times a week. Then there are longer episodes 2 times a week. Bobby Skinner, this is absolutely fantastic. This is very exciting. Longest tenured Giant is our first player. I think Sterling Shepard is an extremely important player on this Giants team this year, and I'm excited to start this process. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're talking tangible players. We're talking tangible football. Very excited.
All right, so the format we're going to try and go with is we're going to go basic info, Justin, fun fact, then stats, and then we're going to talk about them. Justin, Sterling Shepard, he's 5'10", 201 pounds, 27 years old. He was the 40th pick in the second round in 2016. Like I said, the longest tenured Giant now that Eli and Zach DeAlessi are off this football team. Eli was the longest tenured Giant for a long time, but now Sterling Shepard takes that. Justin, he signed an extension last year, 4 years, $41 million. This is the first year in that. There's a potential out after 2022, so it's kind of a 2-year contract with some dead money after that. But if injuries continue after 2022, there could be a potential out, Justin. We'll get into the stats, but tell me something I don't know about Sterling Shepard.
So you might have known this, but maybe not, about his wife, Chanel Inman. She's a Victoria's Secret model. So she's a very good-looking woman, very fantastic woman. But in a GQ Sports video where we actually got some behind the scenes at like Shep's life, he came home from a workout, and he usually likes to get some extra work in. So his wife is actually the one who is putting the footballs into that machine, the machines
the
you
jug
see at like
machine.
training camp. Yeah. So she's the one that's putting the footballs back into that machine. And then Sterling Shepard is throwing the football back to her, and then the reciprocal process continues. But you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is probably just being done for this GQ workout video, right? Or this is probably just being done for this GQ YouTube video just to make them look good. But no. Like, Chanel Inman is legitimately catching the football better than like half the tailgaters at MetLife Stadium. So it's one of those things where you're watching her, and it's like, I can tell that you've done this before, and you've done this literally thousands and thousands of times with your husband. So Sterling Shepard, he goes and he works out, and he comes home, and with the huge rock on this woman's hands, Bobby, I'm telling you, the rock was apparent. The rock was apparent on her left hand. The
4
huge
years,
wedding
41,
ring.
you got to do it.
The huge wedding ring on her left finger, and then they're just playing catch, and Sterling Shepard's getting an extra work afterwards. And also, I think this is also just a well-known fact. Sterling Shepard had 2 uncles who played at Oklahoma. His father was also a football player at Oklahoma. His father was also an ex-NFL wide receiver. Unfortunately, passed away when Shepard was 6. But some fun facts about Sterling Shepard, just in case you didn't know.
I like it. Chanel Shepard. That's some good alliteration when they got married. Justin, let's go through some stats. Last year in 2019, he played 10 games. We'll get to the injuries, but he played 10 games. In those 10 games, he had 57 catches, 576 yards, and 3 touchdowns with a 68.7 catch rate. On a 16-game rate, that leads to 91 catches, 921 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I feel like that's pretty good. At a per-game rate, that's 5.7, 57.6 yards. Now, he only got to play 6 games with Sterling Shepard, or with Golden Tate and Darius Slayton. So we had this trio, and we're not going to get into like what ifs if these guys get hurt, but we had this trio. They only played 6 games together, and the debate with Shepard a lot of times is, should he play slot? Should he play outside? With Golden Tate, he plays outside. But when Tate was out, there was 3 games Shep played where Tate was out, and he played the slot, and he looked really good. And there's some more memorable games, like the Tampa game is one of those games. Dallas with Eli. Washington. Yeah, like he was good in those games. Washington, he was a chain mover in that game. So I went and looked at, with Golden Tate, Justin, 6 games. He had 34 catches, 318 yards, and 1 touchdown. The stats are almost the exact same. from 5.7 catches to 5.6, and from 57.6 yards to 53 yards per game. So they're the same. So the inside-outside thing isn't a battle. And I remember in 2018, his slot outside stats, like his outside stats were a little better, and he had less reps there. So I know we kind of get like who plays slot. You know, Shepard's a more natural slot receiver, and he is, but he's been capable outside, and like there was opportunities for him to be even like bigger and badder on the outside.
Yeah, I'm very firm on saying that Sterling Shepard should be the slot guy because of his role, and frankly, also Golden Tate's role as well. Now, could be something that is evolving, and it could be something that relatively doesn't matter at the end of the day. But Sterling Shepard's numbers, and Bobby, maybe if I can kind of jump to this a little bit, Sterling Shepard's role in 2019, I think it drastically changed, compared to previous years where he was kind of a yak guy. He was kind of a yards after catch guy. A lot of his significant numbers went down. So maybe, I don't know if somebody in the analytics community, if somebody would not like Sterling Shepard, but I actually kind of like how his numbers went down because it means that his role changed, and his role on the team as a security blanket for Daniel Jones, as a chain mover, as a guy that fits into zones and he sits into zones and he's a smart football player. Those things were kind of cemented for me in 2019. And that's why I really like Sterling Shepard, despite his yards per reception went down. It was the worst in his career at 10.1. His air yards before the reception went down a decent amount from 2018. And his yards after the catch, like I said, went down substantially from 2018. It doesn't mean that he had a bad year. Doesn't mean that he's bad for the team. But with that 68% catch rate and his ability to move the chains, especially compared to our other wide receivers that have somewhat of a lower catch rate, Shepard is going to be that guy that is going to be that rock. He's going to be reliable for Daniel Jones. He's going to be that chain mover. And we said chain mover multiple times. He finished in the top 10 in the NFC with third down receptions that went for a first down.
And that was with missing 6 games, Justin. I think he's the best wide receiver on the Giants. I really do.
Yes.
One is he's a team leader in general. Like you could tell, like he buys in. And I do think like culture-wise, he is someone who benefited from Odell and not learning some of those bad habits. I don't know why I just invoked Odell in a 2020 PPP. And someone who starts it off is going to be like, these guys still talking about Odell? It's like, no, we usually don't. Justin, I went and watched a couple of games of film to refresh myself on Sterling Shepard, and he plays really smart. Like he's not just a run your route and go. Like he's smart. And I saw his eyes on one play where he's running a drag and then he sees the middle linebacker drop and he sits in that zone and it's a catch and it's a conversion. He's the best route runner. He's very crisp. He runs the best double routes. Like there's some double routes that Sterling Shepard got completely wide open. And like on third down, like out routes, Jones trusted him, and there was times where they had Tate doing the same thing when Shepard was out, and it wasn't as successful. There wasn't as much separation, so he's the best route runner on the team.
There's actually a bit of stats to back that as well in terms of separation. Now, just because you get a lot of separation or just because you don't get a lot of separation, I don't think that's necessarily a reflection on route running per se. But Sterling Shepard in 2019 had the same amount of average separation as Evan Ingram and Travis Kelce, considerably better than Darius Slayton and Golden Tate. That's from NFL Next Gen Stats. You can look that up right online. And it backs up this notion that, Shepard is, again, he's that security blanket for Jones. He's able to create space. He's able to find space. And in terms of comparing that to the rest of the league with Sterling Shepard and his separation, it was pretty much the top quarter of the league, whereas Darius Slayton and Golden Tate ranked in the bottom quarter. Which isn't a bad thing. It's just about finding a role and finding your place on the team.
Right. And like you said, you mentioned his third down catches. Jones trusted Shepard on third down. And I think when he was in, I think he was Jones' favorite target. I mean, that Minnesota game, you had 2 missed throws by Jones. One where he just barely put it over him, would have been a 60-yard touchdown, and then the overthrow in the end zone. Game goes from 5 catches, 40, from a possible 7 catches, 130 yards and 2 touchdowns to 5 catches, 49 yards, and he got concussed in that game later on a nice throw by Jones where he dropped. So to both of them, they could use a little more chemistry. You think of the Bears game where there's the double move route where Jones missed him by a bit, but they also got held a little bit. And that's another thing. Like he draws defensive holding penalties, because of his crisp route running. And you could see Jones to be times where he's expecting Shepard to break that route, and it'd be a defensive holding, and Jones would take a sack, and then obviously they would get the defensive holding penalty
Yeah.
because Jones was like, hey, I know that he's going to break that route and be open. So, Jones would take the sack because of that defensive holding. And I think Jones will have an effort to get the ball out a little quicker. I think Evan Ingram's going to be big in that role, but I also think Shepard is. We talked about him being smart, and so Jones, that internal clock should be a little better in year 2. And I think Shepard will benefit from that because he is the guy who finds those open holes in the zone.
Yeah, and in terms of getting the ball out quicker, that's one of the reasons why you don't mind if his yards per reception isn't as much as it was in 2017 to 2018. 2017, 2018, it was over 12, and especially 2018, it was over 13. And again, Shep was a guy that he was up there considerably in yards after the catch. That changed in 2019. Not a bad thing. There's 2 other stats that I want to read for Shepard, and then I'm done in terms of stats that maybe we can have I kind of want to go to like a conversation about comparing him to a little bit of like Cole Beasley, since Jason Garrett's an offensive play caller, and also possibly even Steve Smith, but you don't like that take, so we may stick to more talking about Cole Beasley. But 1 drop in 83 targets, that's about a 1% drop rate. And Sterling Shepard played in 10 games last year. In 8 games, he received more than 7 targets. In 6 games, he received more than 9 targets. Bobby, and here we'll have a little fantasy football conversation. Bobby, if this guy doesn't have a concussion problem, and if that's not the thing that's looming over him, you're loving him in PPR leagues because he gets the targets and Daniel Jones relies on him.
Yeah, I don't think he'll ever be I don't think he's going to, his rookie year he did have 8 touchdowns, but I don't think he's going to be the touchdown leader on this Giants team.
I have a take on that, Bobby.
Okay,
I think he's
going to, but I do think he's going to be we're not going to account for injuries, but I think he's going to be the reception leader and the yards leader for this team. If all things are equal, he stays healthy, I think he would easily be that guy on the team.
I have a little bit of a take on the whole touchdown thing because he had 8 touchdowns in 2016. Now you could say that the touchdown stat is kind of a random stat, especially for some wide receivers in some years. Julio Jones I feel like Julio Jones hasn't caught a touchdown in 10 years, but especially the way that we rely on Shepard with these in routes, with these button hooks, finding zones. When the field shrinks in the red zone, and sometimes you need to spread it out. Let's just say the running game isn't really getting it done inside the 5-yard line. You need to go 11 personnel. You need to spread it out a little bit. Sterling Shepard running these drag routes, I kind of like that in the red zone. And he's going to be that smart guy that's going to be able to get that separation necessary for a touchdown. So we may see, if things go correctly, we may see his touchdown total rise this year. It's my little Justin hot take for this episode.
You won't hear me complain about that.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the part that sucks. Injuries with Shep. He played 16 games his first and third year. His second year, he missed some games. This past season, 2019, man, I mean, first week of camp, he breaks his thumb. They had him practicing with a broken thumb, which me and you both were like ripping our hair out. It's like, why? Like Eli's drilling the ball into Sterling Shepard. Then the concussion week 1 against Dallas while he's blocking. And then Minnesota on the deep ball on the left side of the field, he comes down and his helmet is literally turned sideways. Listen, everyone likes to give concussion takes. We don't know. I don't know. Like, there is a difference between mild concussions and heavy ones. Last year, I will give Shep credit. When a lot of players will hide them, he was set to play that Monday night versus Dallas, and he said, I'm not ready. Yeah. And he sat out the next 2 weeks. Do you think he plays 16 games? That's a hard question, but do you think he plays 16 games? Because basically it's like, don't get a concussion. Because otherwise, if he doesn't get a concussion, he plays 16 games. And our wide receivers shouldn't be getting smacked around like that. I mean, one was a blocking play, and the other one where, he hit his head on the ground against Minnesota.
Bobby, that's so tough to predict. And I know you're a big fan of him running the ball. He had some pretty successful runs last year, too. And if you want to even go into that a little bit, you can. I feel like he had more than 6 rushing attempts, but he had 6 rushing attempts. Were some of them maybe counted as passes because it's like one of those toss plays? I don't know.
Possibly. He had 6 attempts for 70 yards on reverses, and 4 of them were successful, 2 of them weren't. And so basically, like, the successful ones would go for like 18 to 25 yards. I think that is something that Judge should steal out of Shermer's playbook. I mean, Shermer didn't invent the a wide receiver reverse, but basically, especially with Jones, and you could have like that read option, and it just helps because you bring safeties in. So I think they should use that, and he's the best wide receiver on the team for that role.
it's just one of those things where if you want to risk possibly you have a safety or a linebacker that's coming, and he's coming downhill and he lays a smacking on Sterling Shepard's head. And then if that's the reason, I don't believe that. I don't believe like you should limit one guy because of a concussion. If somebody's going to get a concussion, they're going to get a concussion one way or another. But
Yeah,
I
you
will
can't play
just say
scared of a
this,
concussion.
maybe I'll put a bow on this. If Bobby, if you want to wrap up, but Sterling Shepard is probably, besides Daniel Jones, I would say right up there with Saquon Barkley and, maybe even whoever our left tackle is going to be. Sterling Shepard and his success this year, and if the Giants offense is going to be successful, it is so, so, so important. I know everybody loves to talk about Slayton and his potential and his ability, and I agree. I'm with you. But Sterling Shepard, for the role that he plays, and I don't need to emphasize it because we've been talking about it for the last 15 minutes, his role for this team and the role that he serves for Daniel Jones is so, so, so important. And it's not talked about enough. And it's such an underrated storyline heading into 2020 about how important Sterling Shepard actually is for the success of this football team.
I agree. And the leg up that we have this year that we didn't have last year is they get to take first team reps with Daniel Jones and get some chemistry down. And you know what?
Love it.
They may have changed a couple games last year. All right, let's take a break and move the defense.